Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just broke down those Big Ten matchups. We got Indiana, Nebraska, a huge one. Michigan, Illinois, another huge one. Definitely two that could have some CFP implications down the road. But let's get into some ACC matchups. And one of these teams is not an ACC team, but at the end of the day, I'm counting them as an ACC team for the time being. But let's get into that Miami game first, because this is going to be a very, very interesting one. Right around 4.5, 5, depending on where you look for that line. And this is one of those that Miami got the bye at the very best time. They played two games where they just needed special comebacks to find their way back into it, and now they go on the road to a dangerous Louisville team. Not necessarily playing the game that they want to play right now. Lost games to Notre Dame and SMU before getting a win over Virginia last week. So one of those interesting teams that could very well still be in the ACC race if they get this win. If they lose, they're almost definitely out of it. So something to watch there. Two veteran quarterbacks in this one. You have Tyler Shuck on one side, a very, very good deep ball thrower, and Jeff Brom, one of the best at dialing up those deep balls. And then Cam Ward, obviously in the Heisman conversation, tons of weapons on either side, especially at wide receiver, and some struggling defenses, particularly on the back end. So definitely some things to watch in this game. It could be one of those that just kind of up and down, whoever makes the last play is probably going to win this one. But this is one of those games that it's probably the last game that's super worrisome for Miami. At Georgia Tech, at Syracuse are going to be interesting as well. But at the end of the day, if they win this one, I feel pretty good that they're going to finish the year undefeated. But definitely something to watch in this one. And players to watch, I think Colin Lacey is very, very incredible. And he has kind of still been getting up to speed in that Louisville offense. But I think with all of the deep shots you're going to see in this game, to Ja'Cory Brooks and to Chris Bell and all those guys, I think Colin Lacey could be a huge player just going underneath, catching a drag, catching a deep cross, and going 50 yards down the sideline. He's not necessarily going to be that just run a go and will throw it up to you like Ja'Cory Brooks is, but he can be a very dangerous player underneath, and I think he's one of those guys that can really just kind of round out this offense more than anything else. And then you got Stanquan Clark, a very talented linebacker for Louisville. And you look at this Miami team, and obviously the pass game is what kind of, gets the headlines. It's the thing that everyone points to of why Miami's been so good this year. If you can stop that run game, which seems relatively easy to stop as of this very moment, you're going to be really successful. And you're going to force Cam Ward into a couple of not so great situations. And we've seen what happens there. He'll make some pretty boneheaded mistakes, and then you can take advantage of those. So it'll definitely be interesting to watch how quickly they can get after him. And then can they stop the run game and then probably attack Cam Ward a little bit later in the day. Isaiah Horton is a very interesting player for Miami because obviously you talk about Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, Elijah Arroyo, all those guys. Isaiah Horton's filling in all of the gaps that they need him to fill in, being a very, very complementary piece to this offense. And I think him and Cam Ward are becoming a little bit more comfortable with each other. Definitely going to be a huge player in this game. As we talked about, explosives are going to be a huge part of this game. Maybe it's the guys that just make those 8-yard, 7-yard catches that make the difference in this one. And then we got Jaden Harris on the back end of that Miami defense. He's got to play center field. He's got to be able to get maybe even a couple of picks in this game with those deep balls, because if they get beat more than a couple of times downfield, which they have been in the past couple of weeks, Louisville has every shot to be able to win this game and possibly just win a shootout more than anything else. And the keys to the game, as you can imagine, explosive plays are going to play a huge part in this one. Miami allowed 4 passes of over 50 yards in the Cal game. Louisville allowed a 59-yard rush as well as 3 30-yard passes in the SMU game. So definitely something to watch in that one. It's one of those things that if it might just be who can make the more 50 or 30-yard plays. So definitely something to watch. I think both of these teams can take advantage of those openings. Who can do it more? Jeff Brom's incredible at scheming guys open down the field. And then on the other side, you have one of the more dynamic players in the entire country in Cam Ward. So whoever can do that is going to be really successful. Thing is, to get explosive plays, you got to have time. So that pass rush is going to be hugely important. Louisville's got some injuries on that offensive line, and when you have Reuben Bain, Elijah Alston, Tyler Barron on the other side, you don't want injuries on the offensive line. They have 20 sacks this year for Miami, 13 for Louisville, so they can get there as well. Trammell Logan is an absolute monster coming off the edge, and he's one of those guys that if you see Cam Ward make a couple of bad mistakes or you see Cam Ward be flushed from the pocket a couple of times, I have to imagine you'll see Trammell Logan kind of trailing him right there. And then the Louisville run game is really interesting to me. Isaac Brown is one of those players that is very, very talented freshman, but hasn't quite hit his stride. Fun little tidbit about this game, he is from South Florida. So maybe there's a little bit of beef there. Maybe he doesn't love Miami because maybe they didn't recruit him quite as aggressively as he thought they should have. I think this could be a huge game for him to prove a point, but they have struggled to get the run game going this year. They're sitting at 72nd in the country, only 147 yards per game, and obviously they had some games early on in the year where they were able to inflate that total just a little bit. So they have to be able to get this run game going. That being said, Miami holds teams to under 100 yards a game. So it's going to be a tough battle. No two ways about that. But Louisville, if you can't get that run game going and Miami can just sit 8 guys back in coverage, it could be a really long day for you. And frankly, I think this one goes back and forth. I think it's a little bit all over the place. But when I think about that Miami D-line against this Louisville O-line, I just like Miami to make that much more, that couple more plays. I think Tyler Shuck will just get knocked on his butt just a couple more times in this one, and that will be the difference. So I do think Miami wins. I don't necessarily think we walk out of this game feeling a ton better about where Miami is going forward, but they do get the win. They continue to roll along to that ACC title game. And then we got an interesting one here. I'm about to do upset alert right after this, but this would definitely be on there if I wasn't doing a full breakdown of the game. This is a very interesting game going all the way down to Atlanta, and it's one of those games that Tech is not necessarily that elite team by any means. That defense can be attacked. Obviously, that offense, while very, very efficient, can be, stagnant at times. The big thing here is, will Haynes King play? If he plays, then he can make life tough on pretty much any defense he faces. If he doesn't play, Zach Pyron, the backup there, is not nearly the thrower of the football that they need him to be. And frankly, there's a new opening in the back end of that Notre Dame defense. It sounds like Benjamin Morrison will be out for the year, probably their best coverage corner and one of the best in the entire country. One of those guys that maybe there's a couple more plays to be made downfield on this defense than there was in past couple of weeks. One of the big-time things for Notre Dame over the last little bit, though, has been Riley Leonard has figured out how to pass the ball. Had 229 yards against Stanford, is getting a lot more comfortable in this Mike Denbrock offense, and Georgia Tech is 38th against the run and 91st against the pass. So you're probably going to want to attack them through the air. That being said, Notre Dame is a running team. They're always going to be a running team. They have so many weapons back there, Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, and obviously Riley Leonard as a running quarterback. So it's one of those things that they've been doing well through the past. They might just have to lean on that a little bit more aggressively on Saturday if they're going to be able to get this one done. And I think the biggest thing here is Notre Dame is officially on that kind of just on edge at almost every single moment. They are on edge pretty much throughout the rest of the season because they know as well as anyone else they got to run the table if they want to get into the dance. There's no two ways about that. So the reality is they just have to worry about going 1-0 every single week. Any slip up would essentially cook them, and there's not necessarily a game you'd be overly worried about. You wouldn't like Notre Dame in. But there's a couple of games there, including this one, that could get just a little bit sketchy for them. And then for Georgia Tech, they are 5-4 against ranked teams under Brent Key, which is pretty good when you're talking about 2 games that they played the number 1 team in the country in Georgia at the end of the year. So they're doing pretty good against ranked teams that are not named Georgia. But it's one of those things that it could be just that little bit tougher of a game if Haynes King is in the game. That's the big thing here, and I don't necessarily know what the status is as of yet. We will update you tomorrow for sure. But a couple of players to watch. Eric Singleton is very interesting in this game because we talked about the losing Benjamin Morrison. If you're going to lose him, then Georgia Tech's going to find a way to attack that opening, and this is the guy that probably does it. He is so electric with the ball in his hands. One of those guys that they'll use in screens, they'll use downfield, they'll use in end-arounds. He's very, very dynamic, kind of like a Kevin Concepcion from NC State. Just a very, very interesting player, and definitely is going to be able to make some plays in this game. And then I want to talk about Kyle Efford, a very, very good linebacker for Georgia Tech, and one of those guys that it looks like his hair's on fire every single time he's out there on the football field. When you have Jeremiah Love to chase down, when you have Riley Leonard to get to the ground, he's going to be hugely important in this game, and really all the linebackers on that side for Georgia Tech. But this is the leader of this defense, I think the leading tackler on this team, so definitely someone to watch on Saturday. Bo Collins is starting to find it a little bit for Notre Dame. I believe he's their leading receiver as of right this second, and he's one of those guys that is just a mismatch pretty much wherever you put him. He's so physical, he's so big that if you can put a ball in his vicinity, he's going to be able to go up and get it. A very talented player, and especially against this Georgia Tech pass defense, I think he'll have his fair share of moments on Saturday. And then we got Harold Cross, a guy that is just going to plug up the inside of that defense. And when you talk about that Georgia Tech offense, It's a lot of Jamal Haynes. You have to be able to run the ball if you're Georgia Tech, and if they can't, it's going to be a long day. And Notre Dame is missing a couple of those edge rushers that would make a huge difference against those read options that they like to run at Georgia Tech. But at the end of the day, if you can plug the interior, if you can keep Jamal Haynes out of this game, it's probably going to be a nightmare to deal with for Georgia Tech. But a couple of keys to this game. Who gets that fast start? I think both these teams don't really have that comeback from behind ability. I think Notre Dame obviously has it a little bit more than Georgia Tech, but at the end of the day, whoever gets that first lead and starts playing with a lead has every ability to win this game, and I might actually like the team that ends up coming out of the first quarter with the lead. So definitely something to watch there. Whoever gets that fast start is definitely going to have that upper hand going forward. And then execution of kind of a similar identity. Neither of these teams are going to pass the ball all over the field. They are going to pick their moments, though. They're going to use the quarterback run game. They're going to use a lot of misdirection, a lot of different things, and you just got to figure out who can execute it at a higher level on Saturday. Georgia Tech 56% run plays, Notre Dame 55%. So they are relatively even, but they definitely lean towards the run. They definitely utilize that quarterback run game. So it's going to be a very, very interesting watch, and we'll figure out just which one of these quarterbacks, which one of these teams is in a little bit better control of what they can do. And then, obviously, quarterback mistakes. Both these quarterbacks in the past have struggled from mistakes, but the reality is Riley Leonard has yet to throw a pick since that NIU pick that really kind of hurt them in that game. And then Haynes King hasn't had a turnover since the Louisville game. So he's gone 2 straight games with no issues, and that is a big-time problem for him. So got to make sure you take care of the ball. Maybe it's one of those things that Haynes King makes that one mistake that hurts Georgia Tech, or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe Riley Leonard makes that one mistake. But overall, I think it's a really interesting game. One of those games that I don't think Notre Dame necessarily is going to lose. I do think Georgia Tech's going to put up a fight in this one. I think there's more ability on that Georgia Tech sideline than some people realize. I think Notre Dame, with a lot of those injuries, is going to come in here a little bit reeling. And I think even if Haynes King isn't 100%, which I don't necessarily expect him to be, I expect him to be on the field just because of the player that he is. But I don't think he'll be 100%. It could be one of those things that it's just margins that totally change this game, and I think Georgia Tech's going to come out on the wrong side. It's going to be really, really fun, and frankly, would not be all that surprised if Georgia Tech got that win. But as of right now, with the questions around Haynes King, I can't necessarily pick Georgia Tech. But going to be a really fun matchup, and I think both of those are really interesting for a number of different reasons. Miami, obviously, trying to go undefeated, get to the CFP. Notre Dame, the exact same thing, trying to win out the rest of the way, go to the CFP, and they are facing 2 teams that very much could get in the way of that. So going to be really fun down there in the ACC, but let's take our third break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the upset alerts all around the country. I have 6 different games for you, and there's a couple here that are a little bit more sketchy than I think some people are giving them credit for. So I'll break it down right after this.